These interconnections are important because the concept of the problem is that in some point, when we believe we have the most substantial evidence, when we believe that our military apparatus is well prepared above the ground and below, then we will begin to exert influence upon those who we believe have betrayed us, and the trial of the overtakers will commence.
All right. Them some little African brothers that are down in Morehouse. They have, and we got a part 2 to this coming out called The Oath Takers. It's going to be very powerful on the youth level. Figuring out that maybe we can cut off the reinforcements of the Boule and the other of those who mean us no good, who go into the depository of those colleges to find their replacements. And we've gone in there effectively, in many cases even sponsoring ourselves, to make sure that we cut off the reinforcements and kind of cut a hole around who we're after in a way that when we move in on them, their options for escape will be limited. Now, another thing, I just left Jackson, Mississippi yesterday. I got in this morning and then got a car to get up here, and I've been traveling for about 30-some hours straight. Part about being in Jackson, Mississippi is a twofold project. One, I bring greetings from Brother Chokwe Lumumba, who had hosted us there. And they're doing outstanding work in Jackson. You know, Jackson is 65% black. And they're about to get their first black mayor coming up in a couple of months. So they just had the primary, and he just happens to be in the Jackson Boule. Jackson, Mississippi Boule. So we did a little Boule discussion there Monday night so that they could understand what it is they'll have to deal with as they fight for social services from the black man as they had to do from the white man. But also as a strategy, and a couple of times I'll just share with you my feelings about things. One of my feelings is that we as African people need to be strong in cities that are state capitals. We as African people need to be strong in cities that are state capitals. Meaning that everybody has to find points of leverage in which they can exercise power against that which is not in our interest. Everybody bites it off in different sorts of ways. Everybody sees it different sort of strategies. But I know when I went to Kentucky State, which is in Frankfort, Kentucky, and it's the capital, and when I go to Atlanta and run around those campuses knowing Atlanta is the capital of Georgia, or when I'm running all over Florida A&M, tightening up them youth and knowing that Tallahassee is the capital of Florida, and I guess what I must have called, Atlanta's the capital of Georgia, and on across the country, we have to pay close attention to those cities that are state capitals, because it may be on a certain day. Maybe somebody who you like is locked up, or maybe something's going down you don't like. You have to ring those capitol buildings with your bodies on certain days, and the ability to ring those state capitals, some of which are located in areas where we have substantial population, at another time may be significant to accomplish some goals yet articulated. So just a little thought about why spend some time going a place where the constituency isn't quite as large. And I went down to Jackson State on Sunday. When I got there, I had them take me to Jackson State so I could look at those bullet holes, Jack, that are still in the building where the military shot up in there and killed some students as they killed the students at Jackson State and shot the white students at Kent State. They effectively killed College Rebellion, and it hasn't been one since then. Since they showed they would put the military in force to stop it. And so we're setting a climate where the students will find it in their interest to come forward and to make change in any avenue that they have. And in some cases, it may be just their physical body. They may not even have to think deeply about it. They just may need to be at the right place at the right time to do what it is that we find necessary. So just a little thought while you think out your own strategies. You may believe that it's your strategy and your destiny to be the person that puts the ring around the Council on Foreign Relations headquarters down there in Manhattan. You may believe it's your job to put the ring around the UN Plaza where the Trilateral Commission and the ADL and a lot of other people who don't operate in our interests are located. But if you got friends, think about where you can put those friends strategically. Don't just have friendships and ability to gather without purpose. One of the themes I discussed on the radio, and I'm very pleased, to be invited here by the United African Movement and to help the transition to a spot. And isn't it strange how difficult it is just to meet, to discuss what we believe as we go to do. Doing is another thing that we know they want to stop. But notice how deep they're getting in their strategy that now thinking about doing must be stopped. I remember something at the Parliament Funkadelic. George Clinton used to have a phrase he used at concerts. Think, it ain't illegal yet. Think, it ain't illegal yet. But as you see your thought moments being intervened, understand at what leg of their program they are in. Think, it ain't illegal yet. And soon it'll be 4 or more, it ain't illegal yet. Meaning gathering. And you may think it won't happen. Right? That's all it ever has happened. Anyway, one of the themes I discussed, and I'm very pleased I got to meet J.D. Livingston earlier outside, and I was very pleased to be offered the opportunity to be on WLIB, and to the point of accepting the sincerity that they had me call them collect from Meridian, Mississippi, to assure that that went down, and that's commitment of resources. And I'm very pleased that they were willing to advance the opportunity that we could share this information. And I appreciate Brother Imhotep, Gary Bird, as well as Brother Livingston for extending that, opening up the door. One of the themes I threw out while I was talking was a discussion out, the tape ain't even out there no more, called homosexuality versus promiscuity. And the reason I brought it up as a theme was that as we get near the period where the circumstances surrounding Martin King's death are thrusted into the public to the point that we understand that the killers are not in jail and the assisters in the killing are not in jail, we understand all right, I know what we could trade money for. All right, anyway, and I wanted to make sure that we spent some time on this. If I thought about where I could make the most impact in providing information in the time that we have tonight, I wanted to make sure that we do the CIA drug connection Coakley style. Another thing I wanted to make sure too is that just for the purpose of enhancing the tape, so that the United African Movement, as they move the tape around and people come into the tape, that I want to empower them with the latest names of the Boule list, so that that would add something to the tape and also give you an idea to know who the players are and how they are in your local area. And as I read you those names and I hold this book up to the camera, and brother, you tell me if you can get this first page on there, because as the Boule buys, the Boule buy the tapes and stuff. They buy the tapes. They buy the tapes. And so in the tapes, I always like to send them little special messages and stuff, you know, special message to the Boule. And I hold this up. This is the Boule membership roster. And on that membership roster, you see a yellow tag stapled in with a white receipt on it. Now, that doesn't mean anything to anybody but me and the person who put it on there. Because only the person who put it on there know who it belonged to. Right? And right back here in the back, by all the chapters, are all kind of numbers written on them with letters in code. And if you can get that in the camera, only the person who wrote that knows whose book this is. And I can tell you that we took this book from the Boule headman, but only the Boule headman and me know it's so. Right? Now the reason I do this is because this is a living operation. This is a living operation, meaning that we learn to move, to do. So whether it be, we were here before and we had the situation with Time Warner and we spent our time trying to break down the corporate alliances and interlocking relationships, the next thing was to go do Time Warner. If it's Boule, we got to go do Boule. If it's the CIA and I lay you out, in fact, I'll give a free tape to anyone who can tell me who the Deputy Director of Operations of the CIA is. Now, I'll wait all month for your answer. Because it'll take you that long to go home and get it. But probably more than any other white man in the CIA, he's most responsible for impeding growth and development in the black community. And part of his success is you don't know who he is. So, anybody got, I got the free tape. Kelly, no it isn't. I appreciate her trying. Pardon me? Jesse Jackson, no, he works for the Office of Leadership Analysis. And only he know it's so. And them. He and them know that's so. And in fact, it's another thing I'll tell you too. When I was down in Jackson, strike in Tallahassee, Florida A&M, back in, show you right, fam in the house, back in middle February. The girl from Jackson, I forget her first name, who is the alleged strike, who is Cosby's daughter, her roommates were there. And when I'm talking about Cosby and so forth, the sister tells me, I was there for 3 nights, she said, brother, if you bring me a picture of that Sheila Jackson, and I make sure that's the same person, I got something I need to tell y'all, because we here know some things, because she been here with us for the last 3-4 years in Tallahassee. It's because you mentioned Jesse Jackson's name, I want to get this in the record before I forget it. She got $50,000 cash from Jesse Jackson. Now, what's interesting about the $50,000 figure is it reminds me of the figure that they gave Betty Shabazz back on May 5th of a couple of years ago to clear away apprehensions over Malcolm's death. That came from Rock Newman on behalf of someone else. But 50,000 appears to be the shut up figure. So what this girl Jackson did was she took the $50,000 and she went out and bought a $31,000 car cash, withdrew from school and told the other students, I told you that was my daddy. And then right behind Jesse came Cosby, gave a large donation to Florida A&M. Cosby's line is, I only give money where my children go to school. Now you've heard between the cracks that he gave money at different times for our education. Ask him, did he ever send 50,000? Because only he, Jesse, her, and the students, and anybody get them last days of Martin King videotape know it's so. Now, we sent the word back to Chicago at this Chicago radio show a couple weeks ago and put it out there to see if the Jackson family would respond. Since Jackson was the paymaster, the middleman. He's a middleman on a lot of things. But just for the record, I wanted to bring up. And then think about the fact that Enos Cosby dies, and then, was it that day or a day later, they arrest the sister for extortion. Now, what does Enos Cosby and Bill Cosby have in common? Bad sexual habits. There you go, Bob. Promiscuity. Bad sexual habits. If brother don't go to Pinky Land, OJ, greatest Army military man ever, McKinney, staff sergeant from Aberdeen, whatever his name was, if you don't go to Pinky Land, it's very likely that half of your difficulties will be conquered if you can control your promiscuity. Which is why to the youth we have a theme, homosexuality versus promiscuity. Because it was the homosexual nature of J. Edgar Hoover, who was a flaming homosexual, a deviant. A deviant. In fact, maybe I could even push this up a little, make it a deviant. And that book effectively, Anthony Summers is a very credible white British writer, and we always look for good white sources to quote. And he talks about the role of Frank Costello. Y'all ever heard of Frank Costello? He was mafia man, wasn't he? What city did he work out of? What city did he work out of? New York, mainly New York. Sam Giancana did Chicago. Costello was New York. Meyer Lansky, what city he worked out of? New York, then Miami and other places where Jewish people went, and Vegas in better times. They went to other cities. But Frank Costello and Meyer Lansky used to set up Gay Edgar Hoover over at the Park Sheraton Hotel. Is there a Park Sheraton Hotel here? On the penthouse floor, they had a little Gay Edgar Hoover suite. Right. And there, the book talks about the little blonde-haired, muscle-built white boys that Hoover would order, who had to wear latex rubber gloves as they fondled his genitals. And his other sexual partner, besides the deputy directors of the FBI, was Roy Cohn, the white Jewish attorney who died of AIDS. Right, right, all right? And together, the mafia would set him up. But they knew by Hoover being a homosexual, they would gain power over him. So on behalf of his sexual escapades, Hoover could not find the mafia. He just couldn't find the mafia. And while the mafia in Chicago kept my daddy out of the Plasterers Union, while the mafia in Chicago busted in on the little brother policy runners, while the mafia in New York took over the lounges and the social clubs and took over the harbor. Oh yeah, y'all know the mafia. So Hoover was ineffective on the mafia because he was in a lover's relationship. So his homosexuality compromised African people. Being a deviant, now you understand why he wanted to hear the tapes of other people's sexual activity. There you go. And when he saw people's relationship with girls, he played the tape to his boys to say how good they were and how less, shall we say, excited and I don't know how to pronounce those things, right, deviant, and more civilized their deformities were. Anyway, John Kennedy had an affair with a Japanese woman. John Kennedy was sleeping with the press secretary of Jackie Kennedy. John Kennedy was sleeping with Angie Dickinson. John Kennedy was sleeping with Marilyn Monroe. John Kennedy said, damn, I just love being president. Now, don't you tell me no different. Some black people think that's what you get when you get a position of leadership. Oh yeah, and I'm just a little sidebar. They never ran into public Jesse Jackson's promiscuity like they used it against Martin King. What's the difference? Yeah, what's the difference? Jesse and Roberta Flack and Jesse and Playboy, Playmate 89. I used to watch Jesse Jackson, Bill Cosby, Wilt Chamberlain, and other black men in Chicago with Hugh Hefner dancing around butt naked at the Playboy Club and at the Playboy Mansion before the mafia came in there and ran Hefner out of Chicago and sent his ass to LA, closed his casinos, closed his Playboy clubs, and sent him to a magazine in California. Just a magazine in California. And anybody who's been around the old days, you remember Playboy After Dark, where he used to look dance with the white girls and stuff. Remember Chamberlain said he slept with 20,000 women? Where do you think he got 19,000 of them from? So when the Cosby thing come up, and I'm from Chicago as a little man, and my uncle running around these other guys, I see some things. So when they come up years later, I well understand them. They're not no mystery. Then you can start asking the right questions if you know the appropriate tendencies. So John Kennedy got, in fact, one scandal got up on Kennedy. He was messing with a British woman who turned out to be a Russian spy who brought down the Secretary of Defense for Britain. So now that scandal's picking up. She announces she was sleeping with an American president. Kennedy gets scared, sends Hoover over there to kill it. Hoover say, you owe me one. So John slips out to LA, he's sleeping with Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe, she's liking it. She calls him at the White House on the private line. She calls him at Hyannisport on the private line. She calls him at the house, at the private line, and John is telling her, quit calling me. So he sends Robert out there to cool her out. Robert, his brother, Justice Department head, please go to LA and settle this woman down before I get exposed in the public before re-election. Robert gets out there. Marilyn's high on pills. She looks at him. She says, shit, that look like John to me. Takes her clothes off. Takes her clothes off. Robert takes his clothes off. And now she's calling two people in Washington. Yep. Yep. Right down to the day she died. When John Kennedy sent Robert out there, because she kept calling the White House saying, I'm going to kill myself if you don't get out here and do me quick. Robert had already done her. So John was a little hesitant about sending him back. Said, look, boy, now I'll send you back out there this time. Do you think you can keep your pants on? Right? So, and you know the Kennedy boys had that problem. Remember the other Kennedy boy that did the OJ down there in Florida and got off? Right, so you're right. So, okay, we know it's genetic. Now, the gangsters were cool with the Kennedy family as long as old man Joe was alive. But all of a sudden, Joe has a stroke and dies. Now, John don't have the protection of his daddy, who's the liaison to the gangsters. So now the various players can deal with the Kennedys heads up. So when Robert goes out there and Marilyn says she's going to kill herself, when he gets there, she's already overdosed. Him and another man put her in the ambulance and started taking her to the hospital, and on the way, she's deader than a doorknob. They turn the ambulance around, go right back to her house, take the body out of the ambulance and put it back in the bed. Hoover got it all on film. He's all excited now. Because Hoover kept requesting of Robert Kennedy, his boss, that he wanted to wiretap Martin King, saying he wasn't the man that he was pledging to be in the public, though that's not a crime, not being the man you pledge to be in public. That's not a crime. But Hoover turns to the Kennedys and says, look, I got this tape here. I don't really need the tape. In fact, one of them little movies, they reenacted this called Dark Skies or something on a Saturday night on NBC. They show Hoover get out of the bed in a bathrobe with another white man, and the white lady comes in there and asks for this tape. Anyway, I have to show you that one day. Anyway, Robert and John asked Hoover, what can we do to kill the tape? And he says, authorize me the right to wiretap Martin King. And that's how the first wiretap of Martin King came about. And he went right to the Willard Hotel, which is right across the street from the White House, and allegedly taped Martin King having a sexual party. Now, on the black side, the only one ever to mention that was Abernathy. And they destroyed his book because of the one page in the book that discussed Martin's promiscuity. And that's a heavy thing to know that the intervention on Martin, his destiny got tied to his sexual habit. Of course, they were mailing Coretta King the tapes. They were taking the tapes around to the various administrators in government, setting the climate that to kill a man who was sexually active was really the right thing to do in a land where a white man fears a black man who goes to Pinky Land. Now, brothers shouldn't be in Pinky Land, no way. Now, and one thing you need to know is that one of the reasons Hoover was effective in the black community was that somebody spread the rumor that Hoover was actually a Negro. No, I mean, that's true. I want you to understand this. Part of the reason why Hoover was not effectively destroyed by the black community was that they spread the rumor that Hoover's daddy was black. And on Hoover's birth certificate and everything else, his father's name is missing. And that's the picture right there, a young Hoover on the left and on the right, older Hoover. And he's always was dubious about his daddy. Well, they spread that, and unfortunately, it adversely impacted the black community, and they laid off of him as he destroyed Marcus Garvey, as he went out to destroy various things that rose to be black. So one element gave him a pass based no more on his so-called skin complexion. Anyway. And I'll just set this up here. You can look at some of the words in there that describe, this is in promoting the book, describing Hoover used his knowledge of John Kennedy's womanizing to ensure Lyndon Johnson became vice president. That's prior to 1960. Hoover himself was a target of a Watergate-era burglary attempt and perhaps even a murder plot. That's tit for tat. Who was the last person to meet with Gay Edgar Hoover at his house right before he died? Who was the last person? He lived right next door to Nelson Rockefeller. Richard Nixon was the last person to meet with Gay Edgar Hoover before he died. They had dinner together. He got up off the table, walked out the house. Hoover fell dead. Someone went in and took all his files. And then they buried him, cremated him. Anyway, that's a Watergate-era difficulty. Anyway, only point to that is that if you remember too, in the spirit of Malcolm X, that part of his disagreement with Elijah Muhammad centered on promiscuity. Malcolm wanted someone, he was told they were unavailable, not knowing they were in a relationship with someone else. And so that began to breed, and brothers, you know how many times you got in a disagreement with another brother over a woman or another man. So you took my boyfriend. Or then I'm gonna kill you. So you would kill for that. Anyway, you know where John Kennedy's promiscuity led him. Led him to them pulling that little steel bar you see over the top of his head, trying to pull his scalp back up. That's a picture from his autopsy. But they pulling his scalp back over his head with a hook, because they blew that head off. You know they blew that head off. And that's where his promiscuity led him. But then we also know, you remember in the movie which I didn't like, Spike Lee movie on Malcolm X, which again, I say to the public because I was wrong, that Baraka and Alambe Braff appropriately condemned before it came public, and it was all they said it was, awful. But you remember that one spot where the FBI sitting on the bed and they listened to Malcolm on the phone. They said, boy, he make Martin King look like a saint. Just a little sidebar dialogue, but the reality is they killed them both. They didn't need promiscuity on Malcolm to have a reason to kill him. It wasn't really about that. It was about effectiveness. And Malcolm's last speech, in spirit to Malcolm, his last speech was, it's one huge complex or combine. It's an international thing that has headquarters in London, in Paris, in New York. He's describing the power structure 6 days before he's murdered. Anyway, point being that sexual habits, and you all know OJ had come to see me before, and part of our disagreement of being unable to work together centered on the fact that he couldn't give me a pledge that he would relinquish his relationship with white women because now he learns that they don't represent beauty. See, it'd be difficult. Imagine we're going to bring OJ to Harlem, and then he's going to get in the limousine with a 19-year-old white girl. And you're going to wonder, what's the disparity here? Can we all be the same people? And of course, it can't wash that way. So somebody went and took him $10,000. He flew down to D.C., gave a one-night lecture. You know, one-night stand. You know what a one-night stand is. And that's the end of OJ in the black community. That was his last black community lecture. Anyway, just keep that thought in your mind about the impact of those things. 2, what is the name of the new Secretary of Defense? Pardon me? Very good, very good. William Cohen. Who's his wife? Sister, very good. What's her name? Janet Langhart. Very good, very good. Isn't that something, sister? The white Secretary of Defense of the Jewish religion marries a black woman, right? TV news commentator when I was a child in Chicago. She was a local CBS reporter. Now I think she's on that thing with Julian Bond, a black show. It's a syndicated Negro Like Me or something. What's the name of that? What's the name of that show? America's Black Forum. Right, America's Almost Black Forum. There we go. Because Julian Bond got most of his later respect from whites for repudiating the Million Man March. And we didn't go jump him when his wife said he and Andy Young was doing that cocaine, did we? We didn't go put no pressure on him, did we? We didn't ask him, when you was thinking of doing black, was you doing the cocaine? We didn't go ask him that, right? So it's funny, they got him out the dugout to try to little boost in his little tired career. Andy Young got a book out, and you should read Andy Young's book, especially the chapter where he talks about all the other people who came against the war in Vietnam who got murdered around the time of Martin. Very interesting dialogue in there, and even about the day that Martin got killed, and some interesting things in there that are very historically significant. And I know I won't have the time to go into the last days of Martin King, because every day new information is coming out that's advancing the dialogue. Even as we get close to the CIA, as James Earl Ray's gun being proven as not the weapon, never forget the people who pointed. Because the only way they found Ray's gun was that the people pointed at the flop house. When they ran to the flop house, they found the gun sitting in the doorway. If they hadn't pointed, they wouldn't have went there. And then Jesse was on Crossfire with Louis Stokes, and I had this on tape. And Jesse says, the man leads in, well, Jesse, you were there. He said, Jesse, you were there. And Jesse says, yes, yeah, I was there. And I remember, and then all of a sudden, Crossfire shows this picture. Crossfire don't show pictures. But when they showed this picture, Jesse immediately went into, well, we were pointing over there because the police were running at us. And when the police ran at us, we pointed over there to where the shots came from. I know the shots came from over there. And you notice how scared Jesse got as Dexter King, and I got to give it to Dexter. I'm proud of him. Not that other King's son, but I'm proud of Dexter for at least trying. He ain't got all the facts, but he's trying, sister, to be a better brother. And in Atlanta, they got them two King's sons. People are trying to help Dexter be a stronger man in the public. He debated the white boy, David Garrow, who brought up all Martin King's FBI files, but when they wanted to get into his murder, Garrow's been against redoing the gun. Don't even make no sense to me why somebody would be against redoing the gun. Anyway, Jesse got on Crossfire. He spent his whole time talking about they pointed where they thought they heard the shots from. Remember, down here is James Bevel, Jesse Jackson, Andy Young, and some more people. But the key thing to this is that a couple of weeks later, Larry King does a special Sunday Larry King with Dexter King, William Pepper, who wrote the book Orders to Kill, and Jesse Jackson. And Jesse goes to make the same statement about why he pointed in that direction. And as God as I give him tribute, the white boy looked right at Jesse and says, that is not where the shots came from. 8 people identified the shooters from the bushes, hits the table and says, you are wrong. And Jesse gets up, you know how he talks and start talking out the side, lips get over here and start talking over there like that. Jesse got muffled by the white man who stood up to him about that phony pointing. We'll come back to that later, but that Last Days of Martin King videotape is very influential because as soon as they get through saying they ain't got the killer, where they gonna turn to next? Get you a head start and jump into that tape. Now, little sidebar, CIA. Who was the CIA man that was responsible for destroying Malcolm's international activity? Not the director, but who was head of operations or covert actions? No, not Bush. No, not Kobe. This is in the 60s. He was of the Jewish religion. He's in the Judas Factor. They mention his name. No. I guess I better offer another free tape. I only offer free tapes when I know you ain't got the answer. Now, I'm going to give you an easy one. No. His name was James Allington. You need to just know the name. He's dead now. But I'm bringing up James Allington was director of operations of the CIA during the 60s, and he had more to do with destroying black people, as did J. Edgar Hoover. The flip side of it is who is the CIA deputy director now, because that's how I know you would be a part of inhibiting that from happening again. And if you do, huh? I thought I heard somebody say the name, even accidentally. Huh? No, Freach is FBI director. They getting ready to set him up and throw him out. Anyway, okay. Anyway, we'll show his name in a second. All right, now, let me do this, and I guess I need to do this in a way that I can be over there. But as I string through these transparencies, CIA drug issue. Oh, let me go back. One last thing before I go there. I just want to get back to Secretary of Defense. What was the movie that used Harlem in it that starred Eddie Murphy, Red Fox, Richard Pryor? Harlem Nights, okay. Now, let's see if you saw Janet Langhart in that movie. Janet Langhart, did you see her in that movie? What was her name? There you go. She wasn't literally in the movie, but you saw her spot in the movie. Sunshine. What did Sunshine do? No, she wasn't no prostitute. Sunshine accepted the assignment to throw a white boy down so the brothers could do business in the street. Check. Oh, now let me go back now. You ain't checking that. I'll make sure you understand what she did. Sunshine took the white boy policeman or whatever he was to bed. Then he kept saying, she wasn't trying to get him away from his wife. She was trying to get him out the street so the brothers could intervene on the action. Right? And what was her name? Janet Langhart. And yes, you got to keep the thing going right. You got to start taking it off the movie and putting in the real one. Now, revolution come. In the revolution, to make revolution or change come, some days we're going to have to take assignments to go to bed with people that we don't want. How many of y'all willing to do that? Now, hold on. This is deep now. This is deep now. Watch me now. Watch me now. Turn around and look at who raised their hand. Who be willing to do that? Now, this is very significant. Now, the question was, who would be willing on behalf of black liberation to throw somebody down that they didn't want so that brothers or sisters could do damage in the street? I'm going to ask again. Who be willing to do that? All right. Now turn around and look again. Nobody again. All right. Now, right here in this bag, I got videotape. I got videotape of some of y'all having sex for no reason at all. All right? So now y'all tell me y'all wouldn't do it for a reason, but you do it for no reason. And that's why you enslaved right now. Because you too sedity. You too sedity to make change. You think revolution gonna come and it's gonna be a clean sweep. No, you're gonna get dirty. You're gonna be the broom someday. Yeah, okay, now you think about that and call me when you're ready. All right, let's go on with the lecture. All right. Now I got a whole stable full of people now. So that's all right. Y'all ain't signed up, that's okay. But if you in some important job, someday somebody start liking you for no reason at all, say, damn, that must be Coakley friend. All right. Now, let's go back. I showed you a second ago the seal of the Central Intelligence Agency. And part of the seal or emblem. All right. Yeah, that's that part of the tightening there. Part of the seal or emblem is that it represents a meaning. And for the point, I'll hold it, Bob, if I have to. I'll move it over here. Let's see if we go. Okay, got it? All right, there we go. Part of a seal or an emblem, like a uniform or a team logo, represents what you're about. And you know, interesting enough, they just changed the name of the Washington Bullets basketball team. You know what they changed it to? The Wizards. And go back to that tape, Base Theory on Evil, where I talk about DC being a diamond And the diamond was considered the luminous being, or the emerald. They call DC the Emerald City. And I want you to go to Oz and see if you can find Emerald City in Oz, because it's there. In the imagery of the Wizard of Oz, Emerald City is where you found the wizard. So then they take the basketball team, put a crescent moon with a star on it, and a man in a Merlin hat, and that's the new name of the basketball team, the Wizards. And on 7th Street, where they just built the new stadium, anybody in D.C. will tell you, and you hear it in the D.C. tapes, the brother goes down there and shoots a picture of the 3 flags they got hanging. They got the U.S. flag hanging on the left, they got the D.C. flag hanging on the right, and they got skull and crossbones hanging in the center. 7th Street, 7th and H in D.C., if you get down there anytime soon, it's still flying. Flag is still flying. Now, what is symbolic about the CIA seal? They make a point in the description. Now, this book that I have here, CIA Fact Book on Intelligence, I got this at the Black Caucus Convention in September. And upstairs, they were holding the hearing on the CIA drug connection. And there were 2,000 people jammed in there. Maxine Waters, Jesse Jackson Jr., they was jamming it up. But downstairs in the exhibition hall, the CIA had a booth right next to the State Department, and there was the DEA. There were all the people they were accusing upstairs. They were all downstairs. And while they were upstairs saying they did it, they was downstairs passing out shit say they didn't. Now, we know the format of the enemy. You remember when we asked Jesse Jackson? Said, Jesse, what's your involvement with the Council on Foreign Relations? I've never really been to a meeting, but I spoke at some of them. Forked tongue. Now, does the CIA have a booth here today in Harlem? Does the CIA have a booth out in the hallway? Does the CIA have a booth in the hallway? Is the CIA having a booth inside the room here? Because it would be a contradiction for us to be trying to knock their ass out and then give them a booth at the same time. That would be right. Confusing, right. So remember, even in the dark, when it's in the dark, you know, and remember the whole process about why you give someone confusing dialogue is that when you tell someone you love them, and then you hit them, and then you say, I love you, and then you hit them again. At some point, they do nothing because they don't know which one it is, love or hate. So they get neutralized. You're much easier when it's all hate or all love. But this is them. So when you're in the dark and it's in the fog and you got a couple of bullets left, and somebody said, you remember me, I was with you. I said, well, who are you? I said, I'm Dick Parsons. I ran the empowerment zone in Harlem that re-empowered white people. And I said, well, are you for us or against us? You know I'm with you. You shoot, you know to shoot, right? Because you know the format. Don't get confused. When you hear that, you know it's them. If it's this or it's that, you can work it out. Anyway, that's another discussion. Anyway, okay. So all I'm making a point is while the Black Caucus was upstairs, CIA was downstairs. Now, CIA's passing this out, and then they tell what their logo means. And since these tapes go around the country, and while I'm talking right in the middle of the tape, I want to put some traps in here for the bootleggers. Do not support the bootleggers of the United African Movement tapes. So if you're sitting at home somewhere in Georgia, or in Jackson, Mississippi, or Miami, Florida, and you're looking at that tape and you didn't get it from United African Movement, don't support the bootleggers. See, they get the tapes and they sell them, but they don't listen to them, so they'll never know their names was mentioned in the tape. Oglesby. Now, and you know they sell United African Movement tapes off of the internet illegally. You said. Oh, okay. Anyway. Shag. CIA makes a point of saying that their logo is a compass rose of 16 points. You can see the rows up there, and rows may have something to do with Rosicrucian. 16 points, like 16th Street and the White House, all are symbolic. The fact that it's an eagle and the eagle faces a certain way is symbolic. It's not arbitrary. The radiating spokes of the compass rose depict the coverage of intelligence data from all areas of the world to a central point, or central intelligence. And so we keep a thought on how they wanted to describe themselves as they come forward in the public. Anyway, just a little ad. Now, as I watch the people deal with the CIA drug issue, and this is another problem we have. Brother Coakley could have wrote the story that the Mercury News did, but if Brother Coakley wrote it, wouldn't nobody black have adhered to it like they did when the white boy wrote it. Because he was a white boy, blacks immediately gave credibility to what he said. As a little black boy who got a little information, who ain't never been asked by nobody, can I help you get it out, but you the little people. I know how they're psychologically motivated by white things. So the white boy does a story at the Mercury News in San Jose. Story gets out, magnified across the public. The Black Caucus picks up the story about the organization that they already had jurisdiction over. Now, you in the last 20 years ain't heard the Black Caucus come out and ask you to do anything to the CIA ever, even though they had already killed Lumumba, killed Malcolm X, killed Martin King, and on down, busted up the Panthers, and on down the line, even though they had already done all those things. Selling some crack cocaine is what they bring to you 20 years after they've been in existence. 30, as they started in 47, they bring the story in 96. 50 years almost after they got started, they bring you a crack cocaine story. All the death ain't even no issue. So now they act like their CIA done just got bad. Now, one thing that scares me, this is a key thing, you're going to check the master, you're going to check the CIA masterfully lead someone in a story and drop them off in the middle of the water. Now, I don't know how it's going up here, but it's starting to die slowly. Dick Gregory, the white guy John Newman, the Mercury Newsman, the boy that wrote Deep Cover, Levine, the boy Gary Webb. They were just at Howard a couple of weeks ago saying they got new information and this and that, and Howard president was there to greet them. Though Khaled, myself, and everybody else is banned on the campus, he had a little CIA hearing there with people who were safe enough for him to sit with. But point of it is that I'm a little scared about how they're handling the issue, because one thing I know about is this: if you stole my money, Jack, I just had to use you because I love you so well. Jack goes by the table and takes my money bag. I see the money bag up under Jack's chair. I go to Jack and say, Jack, would you investigate the disappearance of my money bag? Jack would look at me and that damn fool. That Coakley, he's a damn fool if he's going to ask me to investigate the money he knew I took. So let's go over to the CIA again. And let's see if we can find justification for going back to the liars and asking them for the truth. Now, I mean, that's just step number one. Brother Monk, you told me that. Monk told me that. Monk, don't forget to take a look at, too, when you get a chance, what I asked you about. Yeah, if you get a chance, the next 5 minutes, I appreciate that. Thank you. Anyway, so there's something wrong about that. And we've been waiting since last August. They went to Black Caucus in September. We've been waiting all this time for the thief to give us a report. And in fact, we even on hold as a black community while we wait for them to answer the unanswerable questions. Now, these are the epitome of our black leadership, political. The epitome of it. We ain't got no people higher than them. All right? Now, I go to Jackson, Mississippi, just Monday. They take me to the little airfield there where the white rich boy in Jackson, Harkness, had 6 of his 7 planes were used by Ollie North to drop drugs. The little brothers in Jackson told me when the planes landed, this shit is still going on now, still going on in Mena, Arkansas. The boys would sit there and tell me when the planes come in, they tell me how they unload them. All the little black helicopters and black airplanes are sitting right there at the Army base, right where the boys' airplanes are, right now, just yesterday. So why would I ask them when I could ask us? The little brothers out here in New York that do crack, that sell crack, they deal with the mafia. They've dealt with the police. They know what police let them work. Why haven't we asked them the key to the story? Why maybe we don't want the answer. Maybe we don't want the answer because we keep asking people who say they don't know it. But there are people who we could have had. What city held its own investigation into the relationship between CIA and crack cocaine in the black community? Which city did that? Hold on now, I'm going to ask you again. Which city held their own investigation, People Tribunal? If they hadn't held a People's Tribunal after they shot through the home of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, they would have never 13 years later got the government to agree that they did that. If they didn't hold the People's Tribunal that investigated it themselves, which city of all the victims held their own tribunal into the CIA crack cocaine black community relationship? None. None. That's what city. No city. Now, CIA gets a deep message out of that. Say, look, remember I did the lecture, Can I Cut a Hole in Your Fence? Said, look, these niggas won't even leave the plantation. They won't even start up their own car. Imagine every time you start your car, you gotta call a white person. Excuse me, Mr. White Man. I know you want to go in McDonald's right here in Harlem, but would you come over here and start my car? Because we as a people just can't start things ourselves. New York, think it ain't illegal yet. You still got a chance to be the only city ever to do it. The victims are still being victimized. The perpetrators are still perpetrating. You still have a chance to be the only African city to respond accordingly to white aggression. Anyway, we'll talk about that some more. Just for the record, so I can shoot this into the camera, because I know black people don't like talking about Council on Foreign Relations. They don't like talking about CIA, so I'm going to put them on in the tape. These are, over time, the directors of the CIA. Now, when I go to black campuses, I have contests for the person who can name me the most directors of the CIA. They get up to 7, some have gotten up to 8, but I give away the tapes as the people name the names because I want to emphasize and reward those things that are of value to us. And if we gave people the reward for knowing these things, they do it. If we tell them it would save their life, that ain't enough to make them go check it out. And I noticed I used to do that Agnew book. I used to tell people, Spiro Agnew wrote a book called Go Quietly or Else. And I used to go city to city and tell the people, I'll give you $100 if you can find this book. And then I start going to cities and they have 8, 9 books. Brother, we're here for our 100. Because the 100 was the reason that made them do it. The fact that to see a white man back down because Al Haig was going to shoot him in the head and he was vice president, that ain't enough to make us go look. But money. So okay, let's appeal to our nature then. All right. Let's do this. As I go to these college campuses, I ask the students, I say, how many of you all are going to get a degree in hunting? Hunter/investigator. Hunter investigator. And none of them raised their hand. I said, well, dang, your black people are really being victimized. They could really use some hunter investigators. Hunter investigator. When they announced that there was a bounty on Enos Cosby of $300,000, I got on the radio in LA, KJLH, with Carl Nelson, and asked the unemployed people in LA if they would work with me in making that $300,000 bounty a reality. And we would hunt this white boy down. Because I know somebody who's really hungry and really needs money, they do great jobs. They do great work. Hey, again, I mentioned on the radio about the black woman who got snatched right here out of New York and taken all the way to Alabama because 2 white boys felt she matched the description of somebody that was wanted for money. Bounty hunting. Hunky hunting. Anyway, we need to have committees of hunter investigators so that whether it's a fire or whether it's a brutal incident or whatever it is, those people who've been trained in organizing facts and categorize them in a way that they can be observed for strategic information so that another team can act on it is a missing ingredient in the black community because every day somebody's perpetrating on us and we got no bounty hunters to back us up. So we'll talk about Bounty Hunters Incorporated later. All right, check. Deputy directors of the CIA, just so that the camera Can shoot it up. Frank Colucci, who helped kill what African leader? Lumumba. And here you got the CIA acting like they chasing Mobutu out of office as if we didn't remember they bought him. And you remember that little video where they show Mobutu kicking Lumumba in his face while his hands are tied behind his back and he's on the ground like this. They got Mobutu kicking him in the face with his boot. As if we would forget that, how Frank Colucci and others helped bring that about. But sometimes we are forgetful people. But I just want to shoot those names. You get them ready? That those names are registered on the tape so that people, you say, well, what difference does that make? Well, we'll see. Another thing, if the CIA is that which is selling the drugs, you know when you go to strike against them, that really the CIA is a part of an intelligence community. It's a group of agencies, from the State Department to the Department of Energy, the Treasury, to the FBI, the National Reconnaissance Office, Central Imagery, Marine Intelligence, Air Force Intelligence, Navy Intelligence, Army Intelligence, National Security Agency, National Security Council, Defense Intelligence Agency, and Central Intelligence Agency is just one in a community of organizations. So when you say you're moving on the CIA, you have to understand that the director is a central person over a multi-layered organizational base. Now, and something else that relates with the CIA is this. And look how you almost even see a crescent moon going around the border, around the logo with the pyramid inside the circle. Look like it got a crescent moon on the left side of it. Probably just a coincidence. Right, there you go. It just don't happen. That's right, Jack. You know it's a subtle thing laid there to identify themselves as coming out of a certain society of secret people. Now, FEMA, surprisingly or not, sister, I was in LA, I raised hell over this, and little did I know what it meant. Mercury News story came out in August. This check was given out in April. But the boy who did the story said he was working on it a year. Anybody who has the power to intervene on a desktop, anybody got the power to intervene on someone's phone conversations, or go in their desk after they leave the office and read their papers, knew that the story was coming. And the CIA knew that the story was focusing on South Central and the black neighborhoods in LA. So what did the division of CIA do? They went to South Central and handed out the largest check FEMA ever gave out in its history. $3,530,421. And when I was in Atlanta, brother said, brother, look at the numbers. They add up to 18. Which means if we know they're that, because you wonder why do it say 534.21? What costs $21 on the end over there that need to check to go down? When you talking about 3 million, and you're going to end it with $421, you're making a point. You see Danny Bakewell there holding the check. Many of their strategies are called cut us in or cut it out. It's a politician's theme song. It makes no discretion for immorality. So they handed this check out to build the Watts Community Center that was burned during the Stacey Coons trial. Because Sister taught me that. Don't say Rodney King trial, all right? I never forget that. I try to take my lessons well. Anyway, it's probably irrelevant. FEMA ain't been around here lately, had he? All right. You need to know the various divisions of those other things that impact CIA. That's the chart on the Defense Department. And I put a little red dot around the Defense Intelligence Agency and the Defense Intelligence Service, because when you look back at intelligence community, you saw Defense Intelligence Agency on that spot there. And those are the divisions of defense. Joint Chiefs of Staff, that's where Colin Powell was. Office of Secretary of Defense, the Department of the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, all of them have intelligence operations running under each and every one of them. But the point is, we have to take more seriously. In other words, if they have a central command person who's in Joint Chiefs of Staff, then we need to have a counter a counter Central Command person attached to him who knows everything about them, knows where they live, where they work, who their children are, knows what they do, how they've impacted what we do. So every one of them needs to have someone of us paired off against them. When you start playing ball, if you leave someone unstuck, they may shoot you to death. So you can't play ball and not cover somebody. So we'll win the game when we start covering the other players. Because right now they shooting, dribbling, jumping in the stands, jumping back on the court unopposed. All right, but by sending it out on the tape and it starts going all across the country, it'll help a little bit, just a little bit. Anyway, let me go faster. I ain't gonna keep you here all night. Department of State. Department of State has a division called International Narcotics Matters. The diplomatic pouches carry more drugs. I'm gonna repeat that again. The diplomatic pouches carry more drugs than the Mexicans ever did across that border. Exactly. So we need to be in the international airports, John JFK International. We need to be there when the planes come in from the foreign countries. And you need to watch the diplomats come through with them pouches and them boxes and them envelopes that can't nobody look in. And then go back and think, when was the last time you ever met honest white people? And that'll help you figure out what's in the packages. Well, here we are on the CIA, where the Deputy Director of Operations, who runs the military affairs of the CIA, the spy system, human intelligence program of the CIA, who runs the counterintelligence center of the CIA, who runs the counterterrorist center of the CIA, the man who runs that division is named David Cohen, C-O-H-E-N. Who's the man who runs Secretary of Defense? William Cohen. Sound like the Cohen conspiracy. When Ron Brown goes down, they bring in Mickey Kenner of Cohenism. They bring Stuart Eisenstadt in behind him to run International Commerce Department. Cohenism. There are more Cohenisms in the Clinton administration than ever before in the history of this country. Cohenism, quietly, strategically putting white people of the Jewish religion in governmental positions, head of IRS. I can walk you down those positions. We watch them carefully in Washington. There are more white people of the Jewish religion going in these positions than ever before. And right now they're quietly doing that. And at another time they're going to strike. It's inevitable that they're gathering up the soldiers to make an attack. All right, just think about that. This division has always been anti-black. Who in that division was against Malcolm? Who was against the Pan? We should know more about that division. That's got you as its primary target. The Deputy Director of Operations of the Central Intelligence Agency. Richard Helms was it so well, having helped kill Kennedy and other people, they made him director of the CIA. William Colby, who died mysteriously in a boat, a good swimmer, whose son was the one who identified O.J. as peeping through the window when Nicole was having sex in the front room. It was Colby's son, who lived next door to Nicole, who testified, first witness against O.J. Next thing you know, his daddy's found in the river, dead. Probably just coincidence. Anyway, in that brochure, the CIA had a little question. We are often asked. Now, I don't know about you, but I ain't never asked CIA nothing. So I don't know where they were so often asked these questions. Because I ain't never asked them shit. Anybody in here ever asked CIA anything? So it's strange that you're going to see some of these questions that they act like this little role-playing thing, because seeing that you ain't asked them nothing, and I know y'all pretty inquisitive, and I'm chief of inquisition, so I know I ain't asked them nothing. I'm kind of strange they got this. Now remember, Black Caucus is upstairs calling them bloody murderers. Downstairs, they're saying, we've been often asked these things. What is so distinctive about the CIA? It has no domestic security or law enforcement duties. Garbage. Lies. Who works for the CIA? Well-qualified people. How many people work for the CIA and what is the budget? Neither the number nor the size can be publicly disclosed. Huh. Well, how then do we know whether you ever been domestic? Check. These are. And look, when y'all be on 125th Street, Lenox, and somebody get to talking that shit, you just... It works just like if you walked up on Dracula. Remind me, I got an award over here. The Teddy Pendergrass Surprise of Your Life Award is going to Eddie Murphy. And it's under the table here. Little sidebar, while I don't want to miss these things. Little sidebar. Eddie Murphy gonna pick up a prostitute at 4 a.m. in the morning when his wife out of town. He had the all-night newsstand, which are very popular in LA. The front row is news and the back row is pornography. Eddie Murphy out driving, she said she needed a ride home. What did we find out when we learned about her? We find out that she's a prostitute that got warrants on her and is under surveillance. Now let me ask you something. If you're the police and I'm standing here and you're right there and I got a warrant on you, why do I need to survey you when I already got a warrant on your ass? You know what I mean? And if you just a prostitute, what prostitutes do they have under surveillance? Unless they're honey out looking for bees. And they found out many other Hollywood people knew him. Then Eddie got to get on Entertainment Tonight and start trying to explain, no, I'm not gay. My wife was really upset. I didn't really mean it. I mean, I'm really sorry. And see, he thought he was back in good with the whites when he sat around the table and got to farting with the elders and disrespecting the black family. And whites told him that was his best movie ever, which was garbage, trash movie. But the whites saw him dehumanize other blacks, and he thought he was back in the Eddie. So you're right. So we're going to give him the Teddy Pendergrass Award tonight before we leave here, because he earned it. The Boy Do I Have a Surprise for You Award. He said he give money to strangers. Well, let's see. See, I told you about people who do things for no reason at all. Let's start approaching him and see if he gives some money up for a good reason. Hey, let's buy a new headquarters in Harlem or in Brooklyn for the United African Movement. And let's build it. Let's build the 13-story building that's the Black House for Black Freedom Fighter University. Since you can give the money to nobody, let's see if you can give the money to somebody. Right. And you know what? I'm on my way to LA. We taking a contingent to the boy's house and offer him the opportunity to turn us down. I ain't gonna say he ain't gonna do it. I'm only going to say he ain't going to do it after we put it to him. And don't be afraid to do that. When I was in Jackson, we got up to Jackson State, and a security guard was standing there separating us from the building I wanted to see. So the brother drove up. He said, ooh, that's security. And he turned around. I said, Baba, if you don't turn that car around and go to that man and tell that man we want to see that building. He said, but he the police, he going to block us. He said, Baba, let him stop you. But don't you stop in lieu of what you think he gonna do. Make him do that. And when we got there, the brother said, you wanna look at the building? Go right ahead. Anyway, let me move on. Questions they've been often asked. Does the Central Intelligence Agency release publications to the public? Occasionally. Does the CIA spy on Americans? Does it keep a file on me? No. Can you imagine? Black Caucus right up over top of them. Well, who decides when the CIA should participate in covert action? Only the president? Oh, come on now. Does the CIA agency engage in assassinations? Explicitly prohibits getting caught assassinating people. Directly or indirectly. Can you imagine that shit? They've been busted all over the world doing that, but pathologically they're still compelled to say no. Pathologically. And that's why you don't approach a pathological liar with an opportunity for truth. Because, check this out. Now, ain't that funny they asked that question? Because if you ain't domestic, why would anybody nobody even care if you sold drugs to the Vietnamese or to Koreans or the French. Does the CIA engage in drug trafficking? No. To the contrary, the Central Intelligence Agency assists the U.S. government to thwart drug trafficking by providing intelligence information to the Department of Commerce. See, they got some CIA stuff. To DEA, State Department. Can you imagine? While they're upstairs saying they did it, they're downstairs saying, no, we don't even do that. Quite the contrary. Quite the contrary, meaning, how dare you even bring that shit up to me? Now, how much did the CIA pay for the booth to get the right to lie to those who say they were spewing the truth? Was it just $1,500? Was that all they had to pay to get the right to lie to the victims? And when do we resist things that are morally unsound when money is the proposition? When do we do that? Probably the same day we start having sex for purpose. So, what happens in the initial investigation? New York Times, CIA finds no evidence of relationship with drug dealers. Isn't that something? Says William McNair, the information review officer for the CIA, said a search of the records found no evidence of any kind of operational, contractual, or employment relationship. Now, if my man, Brother Alton Maddox, had been here, I would have turned to him and said that in legal terms, when you approach someone over an allegation, the court compels you to at least set a certain standard, or what's called a prima facie. On the surface, this appears to be true. And when I heard the Black Caucus and the others go out and fight the CIA on the drug thing, I heard them argue over the 86 thing. Did they do it in 86, or 84, or 85, or 91? But that's not the way you approach a problem about did they or did they not do it today. First, your job would be to show them do it in the past. 8, 9, 10 times. And then you say, now, in 86, did you do it? Having laid the prima facie on the surface, it is likely that your ass could have done it in 86 because you did it in 76, 66, 56, 46. You did it to the Chinese even with the Boxer Rebellion. What do you mean you didn't do it? You've been always doing it. You did it to the so-called Indian. Principal constituency of something is your relationship dominant or recessive. All right, just got to make sure you understand the level there. Okay. Anyway, I ain't gonna go through this other thing about the CIA. We'll end with that one from the book Operation Mind Control. Now, this is what's important. All those people who are waiting for the CIA to investigate what happened with the CIA-Contra cocaine connection have not responded to this investigation. This investigation was conducted, the article came out in August. In November, this investigation was conducted by the CIA Inspector General Hitz, Frederick Hitz, Frederick R. Hitz, whose daddy worked with J. Edgar Hoover, was the chief attorney in the Department of Justice under J. Edgar Hoover. And CIA Inspector General Frederick Hitz said that contract work had been done at MENA. Now, let me explain this to you. If you accuse the CIA of selling drugs, you have to go into the operation. If, where they train the pilots, where they drop the cocaine, now this is the Clinton connection. This is what went on in Mena, Arkansas. They dropped the bales of cocaine. They dropped the money, the cash. Ron Lissiter, who was one of Clinton's men, who went to jail for cocaine. He's the one that made Clinton's brother a cocaine addict. Because the bales was coming down. They was cutting the bales and tooting the dope when they go into the count house. But the investigation into MENA has gone unchallenged by those in Congress, and those social activists who are against the CIA story have allowed the CIA to come out and conclude that the cornerstone of that operation never happened. Now that means to me that when they eventually answer these Negroes, having never fought this thermometer sent out to see if they were really paying attention, having never fought this story, CIA knows that when they come with the grand conclusion, they're going to say, how could you conclude 1 and 1 is 2? Say, but when I told you this was 1 and you didn't answer me, I knew I could add 1 more to that and make 2. Mena, Arkansas is where they trained the pilots who flew the planes. Eugene Hassenfuss, the white boy who lived when the plane crashed in Central America, in Nicaragua. The plane crashed and he walked out the plane. The Sandinistas grabbed him and took him to the corner. He said, I'm running towards Raleigh North. He was on Barry Seal's plane. Barry Seal. He was on Barry Seal's plane. CIA personnel instructed Seal on how to use the camera. They used Seal to go in and record Sandinistas loading a plane of drugs. And Reagan used that to say that the Sandinistas were selling drugs. But they used the drug seller's plane and the drug seller to set them up. And that then got Congress to lift the Bolin Amendment, and then they got to fund the Contra straight up without restriction on the fake camera work. Barry Seal got assassinated in New Orleans while he was in a treatment center because he knew too much. Shot in the head in his car in a Cadillac out in front of the treatment center where they were holding him because they had let him out of all these drug cases, but they put one last case on him to make him go down there and get killed. And the man who he worked for, him, Terry Reed, we're going to take testimony from Terry Reed, who trained the pilots in Nicaragua. And he says the training took 5 months. But right here is that the CIA had contact with any individuals or businesses based at or operating through the airport in Mena, Arkansas, including no money laundering, no narcotics trafficking, or no arms smuggling, which are all absolutely lies. But no one who is coming forth with this allegation has challenged this initial supposition. And it lays a precedent in the eventual fight that's going to make us fight 80 days after the concrete done already dried. We're going to be trying to chip the concrete when we could have tore it up when it was wet. Sometimes we make our own job harder. Now, they ain't gonna never go call me to come help them out because I ain't on board. On board means you know how to talk against them in the day, take the money from them at night. So since I ain't on board, they never call me to have me do the Gary Webb for them. Anyway, that's important. Now we must lay the prima facie that yes, the CIA sells drugs. One, I call before you now, former CIA agent, CIA African Division Chief, author of several books, John Stockwell. Will you take the stand, please? John Stockwell takes the stand and offers before us the evidence of one of his books called The Praetorian Guard, the U.S. Role in the New World Order. Mr. Stockwell, having been involved in the CIA, in fact, in your book, In Search of Enemies, you told us about how Frank Colucci and those others killed Patrice Lumumba. Would you tell us about your knowledge of CIA involvement in selling drugs in the past? He said, sure. On page 119 in my book, I describe several past activities of the CIA. Don't get away here. Get your ass back on the stand. Several times in the past where the CIA has sold drugs. One, the French Connection. You saw the movie, Gene Hackman and all that. That was CIA stuff. Lucky Luciano, who they put right here on the docks of New York to run the docks for the mafia, for the government, to get control of the docks to make it safe for the drugs. Lucky Luciano, New York East Coast ports. where the CIA feared sabotage, they end up allowing the mafia to run drugs to help the CIA do the pipeline from the Middle East, became known as the French Connection, okay? Check. Number 2, the Golden Triangle. Southeast Asia, the Golden Triangle. And notice now how esoteric the symbols get. Golden Triangle, Golden Crescent. We're looking at the crescent laying on FEMA with a triangle in the center. Probably just coincidence, of course. Golden Triangle is Southeast Asia. Grew directly out of, and they even have movies on Air America how they did drugs. Turn right around and say, see, this is what's interesting. I got ABC denying the CIA sold drugs, but 11 years earlier got ABC showing them do it. CIA admit that Air America sold drugs such that they supposedly got out of Air America. Put Mel Gibson in the movie. Then turn right around and say, we ain't never done that before. No. Do CIA traffic drugs? No. Quite the contrary. That's the danger of information. That's the danger of storing information. How many of you all are online? No, really all of you are, but you don't really know. You know what white online is. You don't know what real online is. This is Steve Coakley Online. Because this is greater than any of those things. Man is artificially trying to do what he can't get his brain to do. Some of you all walk up to me and say, brother, how do you know all that? You keep all these things going on in your head and all of that. And believe me, I can tell you every word on every one of these things without ever looking at one of them, but I show them to substantiate myself to you. Good white sources. But this is the best stuff. If you need some backup for this, you can get one of them. But don't tell me you online and you got that first. This is the #1 computer. This got capability you ain't never even tapped. And that other thing, when the lights go out, ain't gonna work no way. So be good at this. And don't feel bad you ain't got the money to get that. Because if you can work this, you can beat that. Now, I got a brother, and one day we're gonna get him up here for you. He's a computer scientist. I was just talking to him before I went to Jackson, Mississippi. Brother Roy, he said, Steve, we were talking about Bill Gates, something Bill Gates had done, and he wanted me to know about it. We were talking, and he said, Steve, do you know that the reason Bill Gates was able to magnify and dominate the computer world was that he went to Kemet and found out that the way the brothers laid the pyramids and the way they connect to the stars is the foundation for all computers. And the way the computer actually builds 2, 4, 6, 8, and the way it works and how it works, binary and all that. I'm not a computer man. I couldn't even give justice to repeating what this brother told me, but he just told me, he said, when you talk to the black people, tell them that the science that computer is based on comes out of Kemet because the brothers did the work without the machine. And you need to hear from this brother, Baba Kofi, out of Richmond, Virginia. You need to hear from him because now you need to go back to Bill Gates and them other people and understand how it was they conquered the computer world by conquering the science from Kemet. And it's just something we need to talk about. And I'm not a computer person, so I couldn't give justice to that. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Stockwell. Let's see what else we got. Golden Crescent from Afghanistan. We got the Medellin cartel. We got the Caribbean. Of course, you know what they was doing in Panama, what they was trying to do in Jamaica and the rest of the places. So we know that Ciedras and the others out of Haiti, they were running drugs for the CIA as well. So we know that. Now, I'd like to call to the stand the nephew of Sam Giancana, former kingpin gangster from Chicago. His nephew named after him. His brother's son was named after Sam Giancana, and he wrote a book, and I'd like to call him to the stand now to testify. Yes, Mr. Sam Giancana, would you name the name of your book? The name of my book is Double Cross. And what is your book about? My book is about the relationship of my daddy and my uncle and the Central Intelligence Agency of the U.S. government, who worked hand in hand for many years together. As a an example, what kind of things did they do together? He said, well, you know, there was a shine in the Congo. There was a what? He said, yeah. My uncle told me how we worked together. Said, I've been meeting with CIA guys since last August. We're going to hit Castro, Trujillo, who really was hit, the Dominican Republic, and some nigger in the Congo. And who do you think that was? There you go. So, is that the kind of example? Okay. Is that the kind of example? Is that the kind of example that shows the relationship? Also on another page, he talks about how many times he helped the FBI with that shine, Martin King. So are you saying that they not only work with the CIA, and they not only did adverse things, but you're also telling me that they're anti-black? He said they hate niggas. He said you even saw in The Godfather when he said, don't bring that stuff in our neighborhood. You can give it to the who? Yeah, all right. So, okay. So you understand, my daddy was in the fraternity of mafia, and we all knew the laws and the rules. Now, y'all enjoying the election tonight? Now, I didn't mean that personally. I didn't mean, are y'all enjoying me tonight? And I appreciate the brother, too, that spoke earlier. I didn't get to hear him speak, but as you ran out and told me how much you felt that, brother, I had to make sure that I offered myself and anything I do, I have to support him in what he's doing because you all felt him so well, and that's the least I could do as a brother. And the winner is, it says here, and I need your help. It says, we are short 300. Please appeal for a few more donations so that we can cover you like we promised. Okay, so this is what we need to do. We need to bring the buckets back, and they're around. So we got to do it because I'm going to do it now because we all want to stay brothers. And while I'm standing here doing what I do, I want to know that I did it on the commitment that we shared. So I appreciate them telling me now than telling me later. And so I know even for those of you who are in the back, or those who came in later, or those who walked out when the donation came down, please do it quick so that I can go forward, and I really need your support. You all have bought most of my tapes. I haven't been here in a while. I will come back up here next Wednesday while the other program is going on. There's a couple of things that I didn't get to bring today, and some things I sold out of before some of you asked for them. I'm going to come back up next Wednesday and make these things available for you. See me somewhere out there on the corner somewhere so that I could make those things whole. And I appreciate all of your support on that level. So I guess, yeah, somebody come down. I know there's people down here who are ready. And sister, you need to turn around to that brother and hand him one of them so somebody can come down here while I'm down here. Somebody give one to Sister Carol or somebody. I'll walk it myself. Donations tend to be higher when I walk the bucket around. Anyway, I hate to come to you. Thank you, sister, for going there so that we can do this quickly because I want to get on with the lesson. And I appreciate the Victoria 5 for hosting the United African Movement. That was very significant for that. And yeah, somebody got to come down front. Down front. Yeah, why don't you just come down front and work back, because that'll allow me to go on and keep moving. Here's brother here. And I appreciate you all very much. We need to at least raise $300. And there's no need to go before the bucket gets there. And you know what? Really, I'm telling you the truth. If God knows any person like this, I need me somebody who has just a little money. Sometimes I'm getting to these cities and they don't really want me there. So sometimes I have to fund myself to the city to be there for the people who do want me there, who sometimes lack resources and the capability. So the point I'm making is that somewhere in life, God may provide me with somebody who has a little money, that when we need the $200 train ticket, because I ain't flying nowhere, or we need a couple of nights in the hotel so that we could be someplace or someplace else safe and secure, that somebody has the front money to get us in a place. We'd be all right by the time we leave the place, but sometimes we have to be fronted to get in a place. And if I work here tonight and pay all my bills, and sometimes I look and got $10 left over, I can't get into another city with $10 in my hand. But with a backup person, I can. So just in life, if you ever thought about having a little money you want to share for 20, 30, 15, 12, 10, 5 days, because it don't never take more than 30 days, then let the brother or sister know, because I really need somebody to back me up sometimes when the program is standing to be in jeopardy over just a few dollars. Sometimes it's few dollars, $100 even, can block a program. And so we just got to be careful like that. And I just need that kind of a backup. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to read a name or two just while you're standing there. Just want to make sure in the New York list, Alexander, Fritz Winfield Alexander, Mr. Lee Andrew Archer Jr., Dr. Bruce Lane Ballard, Mr. Earl Benjamin, Dr. George Clayton Blanche Jr., Dr. Samuel Chester Brisbane, I remember him from the past, Mr. Sharnia Buford, Attorney Alfonso Carney, Mr. Kenneth Chenault, who they just did a big spread on. He's now president of American Express. Alfonso Carney, Kenneth Chenault, Malcolm Corin, Dr. Leonard DePoor, Dr. Harry Delaney, Dr. Walter Ivy Delph, D-E-L-P-H, Delph, of course, David Dinkins, Howard Dotson, Harold Emmanuel Dooley, Edward Dudley, Edward Dudley Jr., Christopher Edley Sr., attorney, Dr. Kenneth Ford, F-O-R-D-E, Dr. Joseph French, Dr. Grenady, Mr. Earl Graves, Jack Greenberg, white man, Kenneth Greenwich. We about finished? We all right? We finished with the pot? Okay, I'm going to jump back. We finished with the pot part? Okay, I'm going to go back to the CIA. I appreciate you all very much. Really, I do. Thank you, Bob. Now, I'm going to tell you something else about these changes in Africa. I do not have enough reliable information to stand up as a brother and honestly tell you that this one or that one is ours. And when we get information from Africa now, please don't repeat it out of the newspaper. Try to get an African to share with you insight, because we're trying to remain direct. If it's New York Times, that's secondary. If it's Washington Post, that's thirdary. If it's Newsweek, that's fourthary. But African to African is direct. That's our primary way of passing information. If you get it from any other source, it's secondary, thirdary, fourthary. So now we've got changes in Africa. I'm unable to give you an honest reading because I'm unable to get the appropriate Africans to inform me in a way that I know we got a viable insight. So if you do have viable insight and can help, as I go to these various places and people ask me for insight, and sometimes I honestly can say I do not know or I do not understand. If you could help me understand some things and we have viable information about who we can trust, I'd share it with as many as would hear it, as long as it's direct. All right? Now, what, Mr. Giancana, else did your family do with the mafia? Said, well, you know, we work with the mafia in cocaine smuggling ring. Where? CIA Mafia Texas cocaine smuggling ring. Literally billions of dollars, a joint effort based in South America, Costa Rica, Panama, which Mooney, which was the nickname of Sam Giancana, had described to Chuck, which is his brother, Chuck Giancana, during the Bay of Pigs era. Based on his brother's comments at that time, Chuck suspected the ring utilized offshore Texas oil wells to subvert the efforts of U.S. Customs. That should take you to another area. The head of Colombia, who got on his way to the UN, had the heroin in the nose of his plane, who was had his vice president resign because they felt he had gotten campaign money from the cocaine cartel. When they had the trial into that money, They found out that the cocaine cartel teamed their money with Exxon, Mobil, Amoco, and the others to provide the new Colombian president with enough money to win the election. Now, they're mad at the cocaine boys, but they ain't said nothing about the oil boys. And the reason I bring that up is that the oil worked with the mafia, and oil worked with the cocaine, Medellin and Cali cartel. So I don't want you to leave big oil out of the CIA, mafia, cocaine, drug connection. Oil. Oil was down in South America. Anyway, just don't forget the Rockefeller. Oil, big oil lives where? Right up in here. Anyway, Rockefeller. You ever heard of him in New York? All right, all right. Now, another statement. Let's take another statement. Last statement from Giancana. Giancana, when you work with the CIA, how did you all split up the money? Well, you see, it was like this. In exchange for our underworld services, Mooney said the CIA looked the other way, allowing over $100 million a year in illicit drugs to flow through Havana into the United States. It was an arrangement similar to all the rest they'd made, he said. The CIA received 10% of the take on the sale of the narcotics. CIA, do you sell drugs? No. Quite the contrary. We only take 10% of the money, which they utilize for their undercover slush fund. Such illegally earned monies were stashed away in accounts. Do you sell drugs? No. Now, the formula has been revealed that 10% of the money goes to the CIA. Can we now call to the stand a witness who will collaborate the amount of money that CIA gets paid for helping assist in drugs? I'd now like to call to the stand former CIA contract employee from Mena, Arkansas, Terry Reed. Mr. Reed, would you take the stand? Yes. Mr. Reed, you wrote a book. What is the name of your book? The name of my book is called Compromise. Why did you name it that? Because when I allowed the CIA to employ me, I compromised my values by assisting them in what I thought was a fight for freedom in South America, which actually was a mock fight based on drugs and murder. And he felt his values had been compromised. Mr. Reed, when you were in Arkansas, what did you do? I trained the pilots that flew the planes that brought the drugs to America. Who did you work for? I was hired by Barry Seal, who you know in that video, Mena, Arkansas. Y'all seen that video on Clinton and them? And Mena, Arkansas, and them airplane hangars and all of that? Mr. Reed, what is your knowledge of the payout agreement with CIA? He said, well, what I knew was that what Barry Seal told me was that we had to give the CIA a dime. Mr. Reed, what did he mean by a dime? He said, well, the dime Seal referred to was the 10% being charged the CIA by high Arkansas state officials for allowing the agency to operate in Arkansas. The word tiling, what did that mean? Doling out. Okay. Okay. Oh, that's right, like a tithe. Oh, okay. Had leaned back in his Sunday school days in Nazarene church. The term meant 10% of your money would be given to the church, and in return, as the Bible proclaimed, you would get back 10% fold. And this was undoubtedly true for the CIA. So what you're telling me is that the CIA took a dime from the mafia, and the CIA paid a dime, example, to Arkansas. Yes, the dime was the factor, Brother Coakley. Like you said, the 50,000 was the shut up factor. Thank you, Mr. Reed. What other information would you like to share with us today? Well, first I'd like to show you the map of Mena, Arkansas. And I want you to understand that these airport bases that we flew into with our drugs and drug money airfields that were hidden between mountains and land that was barely traveled by humans in a way that we could get in and out without disruption. And you know, I went to Mena, Arkansas. Y'all know I like to go to these places. And I found Africans who are willing to talk. Yes.
Us, and I just wanted you to know that.
Okay.
I don't know why I was taken, and I wasn't asked.
Who took the young man's picture? All right. Huh? All right. Okay, then let's do this. Let's do this. Now that we have addressed the fact of who has the picture, then at the appropriate moment, you can talk to the brother, and he can talk to you, and you can talk to the sister, and we can work those things out. All right? All right. Okay. Now, let me ask you this. You ain't up to nothing, are you? No, I mean in a funny sense. I mean, you might be the black military's key assassin. Right. I appreciate that. All I want to make sure is, Baba, that I can utilize the strength and the power that you have. Because I would hate you to be an outstanding assassin and I don't know you. Because I got some jobs for assassins if that's one of your jobs. I understand. No, brother. This is a young African. And anytime we have young Africans, you want to teach them about the movement. And his inquisitive nature is of high value. We don't find anything wrong about that. I don't find anything wrong about that. And if you don't raise a question, you can't get a question answered. So this brother may have more historical lineage, and he might need to know this man, and that man know that man, and we can work those things out. And if you don't feel satisfied at any time, now let me speak now. I'm running the lecture. If any time you don't feel satisfied with the problem that you rose, you can see me. All right, thank you. All right, now let's go back to Terry Reed in Mena, Arkansas, at the airport that they're dancing in through the mountains. One thing Terry Reed teaches us is, well, how did you get the airplanes in without the FAA knowing that you were dropping drugs? And he teaches you this in the book. He says, Barry Seal, in training, would teach me how to put an airplane in the air. Said, I'm going to get in plane A. And he had me get in plane B. And he had me fly my plane right up to the butt of his plane. Such that while we were in the air, on radar, together, so close, we looked like one plane. Said, then when the FAA would give us the right to land, as soon as they gave us that authorization, one plane would dip off of the two, and one would land, and the FAA would believe that the one that they saw was the one that landed. Now, just a little sidebar, y'all need to get your ass out here in these islands off Long Island and find out what that military shit is out there in Zone 105, using them Israeli-bought drones, bringing down them commercial airlines. And that's something close enough you can investigate yourself. Maybe one of these insurance companies would pay big to prove that it wasn't TWA. You got to learn how to find you a client. TWA is about to pay millions of dollars. And FBI says, well, it wasn't a missile, it wasn't a bomb, therefore it must be mechanical. That's not how you don't deduce shit like that. Right? You can't and TWA now is reaching out to the critics of the crash, seeking their help to save them from what effed ValueJet and knocked them out of that Olympic money. Delta and TWA and all them paying $1 million to be a client for the Olympics, and ValueJet ain't put up nothing, and they were sold out every flight. So then ValueJet goes down in the water, knocks them out of all of that prepaid ticket sales, and they don't come back until the Olympics is over. And the white boy goes and gets a victim, a little chubby butt white boy, and say he did the bombing to make all them people go back to the games. Knowing they ain't caught nobody, but they needed confidence to keep the people at the fake game. So just think about that sacrifice and scapegoat thing. Anyway, Mr. Reed tells us about how they says, you know what? Say every time, where did you get the planes to fly? I said, well, we didn't get a plane from Adolph Cord, the beer man. Or we didn't get a plane from that guy Harkness, the richest man in Jackson, Mississippi. Said we found out that the CIA had a highly sophisticated stolen aircraft monitoring system. That the CIA would go to a small airport, literally unhook a plane, fly it out of the hangar, change the registration on the plane, and they had a whole tub full of planes. Anytime they needed one, they'd make sure that the plane was well insured so that the insurance company, probably CIA, would pay the person who lost it. And you know what? I ain't never heard nobody complain about no stolen airplane. But that means that the industry of stealing and getting paid is so quiet and so far away from the daily tread of black people that we haven't heard the language of disruption on stolen small aircraft. And I just want to, Mr. Reed, come back to you at another time, talking about how the federal government has for years been borrowing aircraft, both stolen and unstolen, with and without the owner's cooperation for use in sting operations. We'll come back to you later about that, because we're going to catch us some airplane thieves. What else, Mr. Reed? Well, I want to tell you that sometimes when we drop the drugs from the air, it will be picked up by a truck. The truck would drive it, and we keep a small plane surveilling the truck. Then we'd run in the water, and the trucks would have to be unloaded at the water and put on barges. Who then would protect the drugs while it was on the barge? He said, oh yeah, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers would run the drugs up the barge. That's why I said when you're chasing the CIA for drugs, you can't leave out the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the National Security Council, the State Department, etc. So the Army Corps of Engineers, he said, whoa, he said, Centaur Rose, that's what they called the project. Centaur Rose makes me think about the Radiant Rose, that's the logo. Thank you. And what's a centaur? With a thing in his head, is that got the thing? No, centaur don't have a little sword up there? Unicorn, okay. Oh, it got half man, half horse, all right? Is there some drug they call horse? Heroin? Horse. $2 a bag, all right. Says they would learn that special barge traffic carrying critical cargo for Operation Centaur Rose had its safe transit assured by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which controls the whole Arkansas River. That's why I tell you, go to the port, the harbor, take a video camera, shoot every boat coming in. You're not going to know what all the boats mean, but watch it long enough. Check the times of the day, the nights they come in. I'm going to tell you one of the biggest drug imports now is Toledo, Ohio. I went to University of Toledo, and I was right near the airport at the Hilton, and right over there I watched these planes come in. 8, 9, 10 planes every 10 minutes at the airport. I said, what planes are coming? They said, man, that's a cargo airport. Find out all this cargo comes into Toledo, Ohio, and there's more cargo coming in there than they got people. And there ain't no big train tracks there, and there ain't no big truck companies there. I only make that because, see, I'm from Chicago, so there was big trains there. So you got water, you got trains, right? You got big trucks coming through there. So if you're in a transportation hub, you got to find all the transportation ingredients. But if you're in a special operations hub, you find only special operations needs. How long had the agency been using rivers largely abandoned by American commerce that favored interstate highways like Southeast Asia? Anyway, what else did you know, Mr. Reed? Yes, he said, I'd like to tell you that he talked about all the people who tried to testify about the drugs that were being sold. He describes how they had 16 pilots and 4 ground controllers, and 4 of these 6 potential were washouts, meaning they weren't good. He describes the whole training process. And the point he's making here is that people couldn't even, Lawrence Walters went around trying to catch the Clintons. But when they tried to put the drug thing in the Clinton thing, he didn't want to hear it. Now, he had a black man liaison to Terry Reed. His name is Bob Nash. Bob Nash was the head of economic development for the state of Arkansas. This is the day Terry Reed met Oliver North, but Oliver North used the name John Cafferty. So he didn't know he was Olive North until he saw him in the media, because he only knew him as John. In other words, CIA sent somebody to you under a phony name. You're working with this person for years. You see him on TV as Ollie North. Say, hey, Ollie North, that's John Cafferty. So you won't know them under their name. And he talks about how North would be the cutout between the body and soul, between the White House and between the Contras. Anyway, that's history. And then you got a guy, Joe Madison, who's fighting with Dick Gregory on the CIA drug thing. But this is what trips me out. Joe Madison is on radio 980 from 2 to 6. Ollie North is on radio 980 from 6 to 10. Joe Madison is on from 2 to 6.
And both of them got the same manager. And both of them got the same manager.
That's right. That's right. You got it. That's right, Bob. You can get that. That's the format right there. All right. Now, Mr. Reed, in closing, he said, I just want to tell you that one of the people we met with for the governor was Senior Assistant to the Governor for Economic Development, Bob Nash. I've been trying to get testimony from Bob Nash because he now lives in Washington. You know what Bob Nash's job is? He's Chief of Personnel in the White House. Chief of Personnel, and a black man. And he's one of the people we need to call to testify about the relationship he had with the CIA operation that ran out of Mena, Arkansas. And notice what he said here, I thought was interesting. He said, for economic development, Terry was taken back by his appearance. He was a perfect double for Bill Cosby back in the days when he starred in I Spy. And when we saw I Spy Revisited, how did Bill Cosby open up the door to the spy chamber? What did he say? Boule. That's out there on the tape called The Oath Takers. It's funny, he would say, I looked at Bob Nash and he looked like Bill Cosby as I Spy. Ain't that something? Okay, Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed, he names the name of the CIA station chief there in Mena, Arkansas. He was a Japanese man named Swahata. He says, how are we going to do this? Terry Reed asked him, how are we going to do this without getting caught? Swahata, the CIA station chief, says, Terry-san, we are the CIA. We are not law enforcement. We're not the Justice Department. We're not the Treasury Department. We are the CIA. We answer to the director who answers to the president. You're dealing with a very top level. These other agencies are not in the loop. They're not cleared for major foreign policy decisions. The CIA has to work this way all over the world. We're not breaking the law. We are above the law. End of quote. In fact, this book here by Roger Morris, which is about the Clintons, had a chapter called Little Rock and Mena, and in it, he says that there have been up to 9 investigations into Mena, Arkansas since '87, and all 9 of them have failed to get to the bottom of the project. Part of the problem is that the project is still going on, right or otherwise. Any organization sponsored by or aligned with the United States government, specifically including but not limited to any programs, operations, or missions conducted in Southwest Arkansas regarding the training of Nicaraguan nationals, the funding and support for any factions involved in the Nicaragua conflict, and any contact or communications with operatives or officials of the above named agencies or organizations. At no time can he make any reference to the president, or at that time Governor Bill Clinton, or Hillary Clinton, or Mena, or Nela airports. No reference at any time to Barry Seal and any alleged drug smuggling operation or any other reference to Mena or Nela airports or to a business relationship of Barry Seals and Dan Lassiter. Lassiter and Company, Arkansas Development and Finance Authority, which Bob Nash had, and ADS former director Bob Nash. It is so ordered this day, March of '96. Signed Judge Howard Jr., United States District Court. So he can have this lawsuit against being grieved, but he just can't mention none of them people in it. And you remember the day I stood on the stage of the Slave Theater and I was telling Leonard Jeffries and them, don't go to court with your problem with them hunkies. And people ridiculed me when they came with that initial victory, because we cannot win going there. We will never beat them there. It wasn't built for us to win. It was built for them to control. And here's a man who him and his wife ran for 18 months, had his life destroyed. He is a patriotic white American. Gets to his own court and finds out he can have a case, but he just can't mention nobody involved. So he dropped the case, wrote a letter signed June 6, saying, I don't know all you people I was trying to help, but I'll never try to help again. I got nowhere to go. And I'm going to tell you something else. White scholars are rushing to the black community because you're the last audience left where facts make a difference. These other constituencies have players in the games. They don't need facts. They need how much they're going to get. Hoagland, who does the thing on Moon and all of them, and all the rest of them white scholars are running to the black community. Why did the white boy drug story? They hooked the black community in it because they knew no other community would work against that story because they know why drugs are there. You are the only constituency that anyone will appeal to in the last days of America. And you need to know that you're those people. The last people where facts make a difference. All right. Thank you, Mr. Reed. I'm sorry for your grief. I wish you had appealed to us early, but we are using your information effectively. Now I'd like to bring before you an article that appeared in the Washington Post November 24th, 96. Now what's interesting about that article is that it was pretty close to the day that John Hitz. John Hitz, what's the date of this story? 11/9, that means it was done on 11/8, reported to on 11/9. This story is done on 11/24, which means it happened on 11/23, just 2 weeks later. Stories, very small. CIA ally indicted in drug trafficking. Washington Post, November 24th, 96, Miami. General Raymond Guillon Davila, the head of the Venezuelan National Guard for 4 years, and once the CIA's most trusted man in Venezuela, has been indicted on drug trafficking charges by the federal grand jury here. Guillon is charged in a sealed indictment with smuggling as much as 22 tons of cocaine into the United States while he was chief of the National Guard Anti-Drug Bureau. What does the anti-drug man do? Sell drugs. Right? What did they find out in Mexico? They had the anti-drug man in Mexico. What was he doing? Ain't that some shit? Does the CIA sell drugs? No, quite the contrary. Okay, I'd like you all to imagine in this corner 22 tons of light powder. Do you understand that 22 tons would fill up this whole stage to the ceiling and probably still not be enough? Can you imagine? Try the whole room. 22 tons of cocaine. All right, and the winner is? All right. All right. Are we straight, brother, on another thing? We all right? All right, thank you. Okay, now, so you can see that the CIA has got the right people out front raising the question about drug selling, because they ain't asking the questions that they need to be asking, and they ain't laying the context. No, I'm not going to ask you whether you sold drugs in '86. I'm going to lay the climate to show that yes, you do deal drugs, and then we will bring the question, did you do it in '86? Because now it's a lot easier asking it. I watch people get on TV doing this and debate Maxine Waters saying, CIA don't need to sell drugs, we got all the money we need. And then Maxine Waters not have the information to back up and say, well, you sold them here, you sold them in the Golden Triangle, you sold them in the Golden Crescent, you sold them doing the French Connection, you sold them in Venezuela, you sold them in Panama. What do you mean you didn't sell them in South Central? But again, would they ever appeal to the people who had the information for help? No, because we ain't what? On board. What is on board? It's the safe, manageable arena that keeps all conflicts in a manageable limits, under manageable limits. It's almost like wrestling. Almost like wrestling. All right? And which city going to be the first city to hold a people's tribunal on the CIA drug crack connection? Thank you, Lisa. The other dogs there. It's right here, New York. All right. And we can talk later about that. If you really want to go there, we can talk about doing that, because when we put, the first day we put out that we're willing to take testimony, and we have us 4 or 5 witnesses to get it going, Baba, you're going to watch the CIA start dropping all kind of, it's what they call limited fallout. When you get ready to reveal the whole thing, they start telling half the thing. Like when people ran to the minister about Malcolm, he immediately said, well, I did help set the climate. Telling half of the story. And I'm going to tell you something else. You might not see it the way I see it. But the last time I saw George Bush, drug seller, Bill Clinton, drug seller, Nancy Reagan, wife of drug seller, Colin Powell, operator drug seller, was in Philadelphia. They were there a couple of weeks ago. They have been planning that since February, March, April, May. But I'm going to tell you this. 1 week earlier, there was going to be a march that could have broke out into a racial fight that would have made Philadelphia unsafe for the president's conference on America's future. And they went deep in the bag to pull a name out of someone who could help a major project and cool what we call Operation Cool Out, where a bankrupt group of religious, immoral, sick, degenerate people stood up behind Minister Farrakhan and cheered away the protests. And I tell you this from the bottom of my heart, you might be scared of some of these people, because sometimes white man gives them a right to kill other black people and be immune from prosecution. But I'm telling you now, as a brother that loves you, who has sacrificed many things you enjoy for the right to stand here and put myself at odds with people who you love. But I will never accept what I saw in Philadelphia from anyone, and I warn them, if it's ever my protests and you show up on behalf of the white man, I will hurt you. And that reminds me of what went on when we was up here trying to do Time Warner. And I saw the same shit on a junior level happen right in front of my face. And I'm telling you, I'm telling them now, God did not ask you to stand in front of the retribution that the white man got coming. Hey, I'm just going to say this as a brother. Everybody don't want to do this. Everybody don't want to talk straight. But I'll die. God will kill my ass tomorrow if I don't tell you what I feel about what I see. And the only way this system works is that when you see what you don't like, you put your hand over your eyes and call it like you see it. Because the day you don't do that is the day you lose your right to do it. All right. In closing, here the story is about selling the 2-ton cocaine. 1 day later, the story got bigger. And in fact, now you don't even see 22 tons in it. Do you? There are other books that collaborate CIA's involvement in drugs. Alfred McCoy. I remember back in the early 70s, he had one about Vietnam. CIA Complicity in the Global Drug Trade is his latest book, but The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia, that was his original book. Talking about any Vietnam veteran in here. Is there a Vietnam veteran? Brother, at any time when you were there, do you remember casually, directly seeing, and I don't even want to introduce the word hearing, about body bags and other things being done by the U.S. military in terms of transporting heroin? Yes, all right. So if all these black ex-military people know of that, what makes the CIA so sure they can stand up and say it without one of them coming back and saying, I saw it. I remember this guy Castillo, the DEA man, say he had all these people caught dead to right, and said his supervisor came to him and said, Delio, you're going to have to drop this. You can't be accusing these people of this. This goes all the way to the top. And he still is today running around on black radio saying one day he's going to arrest those CIA people for working against their own government. Just like the boy Levine. He says one day we're going to catch these people. Levine's daughter got hooked on crack. Brother too. They felt the victim and say, Clinton ought to be more concerned. But then he's wrapped up in his ass in investigations anyway, so it ain't much free thought gonna come out of him. Even the Spotlight talked about, you can barely see this, about drug pollution in the CIA, saying it has always been alliances between the CIA and the Mossad over selling drugs. And even in the opening of Terry Reid's book, as he talked about why he wrote it and called it compromise, because he compromised his values and principles. That he worked with the guy Nir, who was murdered, who worked out of Israeli intelligence with Ali North. His plane crashed. There was a whole bunch of plane crashes during that period of people that knew. That's the guy Buddy Young, who was Clinton's man in Arkansas, chief of security, now deputy director of FEMA. He was head of FEMA in the Texas region, but after the floods, Clinton just brought him to Washington and made him deputy director of all FEMA. And it talks about in here how Meyer Lansky was big in the drug business. So we ought to take that to the ADL. Brand new day, bad news for the Boule and ADL as well, because they all going to hell. It's a brand new day, bad news for the Boule. The Nugent, N-U-G-E-N-T-H-A-N-D, Nugent Hand issue. These are white boys who sold drugs all in the Polynesian areas, Hawaii, all in the islands. These white boys, the Nugent Hand case, CIA boys. The guy Jonathan Twilly, Nitwitter or something, wrote a book about Nugent Hand. I can't think of the white boy's name, but the book is again more evidence from white people on white CIA involvement. And look at how the big white press, the Washington Post, the LA Times, the New York Times, are the three blind mice. They don't see no drugs, they don't hear no drugs, they don't know of no CIA selling drugs, because they are the CIA. They are the CIA. Don't think these are independent corporations. These are independent corporations owned by government agencies. And so then, what just happened? Not only did the three major papers buck, but the white boy who was the editor over Gary Webb came out last week, Joseph Krebs, and repudiated the own damn story 9 months after it had been in the public. Right when Gary Webb said he got new information to share, the editor, his editor, the white boy, who works under the brother. See, the brother is the publisher. The white boy is the chief editor, and the white boy wrote the article. Now, I saw that brother on one of them shows, and he was strong. Believe me, they ain't gonna get him to buck down. But it's interesting that the white boy under him is bucking now in the public. And then what did the Washington Post do? After doing no real story on it, takes his repudiation of the story and puts it on the front page last week. Did they do it up here too? It was on the Times. All right, might not have been in the front page. And of course, they always say about how you can't even say conspiracy. That's why I did a tape. The conspiracy to say it's no conspiracy. Whites spend all day denying conspiracy. Cigarettes ain't addictive. Conspiracy to say it's no conspiracy. Had all the white boys stand there and put their hands up. But this I want to give honor to this white boy Kessler, who was head of the Federal Trade Commission. Because he got an anonymous envelope stuck in his transit that fell into his office. He probably one of the only white boys in Washington that would follow up on anonymous memos. This boy that lasted 2 different presidents. He's the one that pressed the tobacco companies about tobacco is addictive, and he ended up getting an informant. And then he got 2, 3 more informants, and with them 2, 3 informants, they turned around. You understand? I have to tell you this. I don't want you to underestimate it. But the pressure being put on the tobacco states and industries is an unusual revolution. This is a strange thing. They forced them out of jobs with smoking. They forced them out of restaurants with smoking, or some restaurants. They forced them off the buses and the planes with smoking. Now they're squeezing them in deep ways. And now they're begging for, now they're getting ready to get together and sell out the victims by cutting a deal that makes them immune from prosecution. Because that's what your good white brother does when you're in trouble. He comes to your rescue. So they're working that out now. But that's a revolution. They're gonna have to do it. But I just want you to watch something. That's an important fight, that whites beat other whites on cigarettes. That's an important thing. Wall Street Journal was one of the few to do an effective story on the Mena, Arkansas thing. One story ran on CBS News, and the white girl, Carol Marine, who's in that video on Clinton and them, she's the one who resigned last week when that dude Jerry Springer was put on the news show. She did also a good story on Mena. Why is it that the black community can't do no investigative reporting? Emerge does this whole issue on the CIA. Got Dick Gregory in it. All it talks about is how Dick Gregory made $300,000 in 1963. Emerge, front to back, no investigation on the CIA drug thing. In other words, why doesn't the black press do what the white boy did? All the white boy did was go to black people and ask them questions. Ricky Ross, will you tell me this? Ricky Ross, will you tell me that? Sends them to some more other black people. And another thing, this boy Tyrone Power's book, The Eyes of My Soul, I suggest to you that boy to switch from the FBI to the CIA. I was supposed to debate him a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if there's any more of that tape out there, but the boy won't stand up for a debate with me because we ruined David Whitehead by bringing him enough in the public to bust him down with his phony CIA book. Now come this phony FBI book, and I had to go see Tony Martin, who published it, and said, brother, I'm a little uncomfortable with you fronting this man into the black community. See, I still think it's strange that Sharpton can't speak at a Lambe Brass meeting because Lambe say Sharpton wore a wire. But then here's a boy who was FBI for 9 years. He can go in and speak twice. Now maybe you can't add, but I can. And maybe that's fair. And then I watched him speak against Minister Farrakhan, Tyrone Powers. Now, everybody got their opinion about who can speak against what. I serve the people I spoke against, so they know me like their children. But I will tell you this. That doesn't justify anything, but I will tell you this. I watched Tyrone Powers on that tape from a Lambe Brass thing say some things about the minister, like the FBI would never watch him. He ain't doing nothing. That's on that tape. Go back and look at that tape. Leon will tell you it's on that tape. Leon got that tape. Then you go backwards, he gets to Chicago, on the Chicago radio, talks about how much he loves Mr. Farrakhan. So I said, look, Tyrone Powers, I saw the tape of you and the Lambe Brass in New York, and I hear you now talking in Chicago. There you go, which Tyrone Powers are you? You must have understood what I said. You didn't hear me correctly. I said I love Mr. Farrakhan. Now, he in Chicago, the only one know what's on that tape is him and me. I got the tape. So then we were going to have this debate April 11th. He doesn't show. We move it to April 28th. He decides he ain't going to show up April 28th. He shows up April 29th. But I beat his ass anyway. But my point to this is this. One point in his book, he says, he's getting sworn in as FBI agent. He says, Martin King would be proud of me today. I'm what most black people wish they were, an FBI agent. But another point in this book, he says he's in Cincinnati in 87. And I look at his book, I said, Cincinnati in 87. I look over to Ricky Ross thing. I said, Ricky Ross say he in Cincinnati in 87. So I started telling everybody when Tyrone Powers come to your city, Tyrone Powers tell you about Ricky Ross. So Tyrone Powers ended up coming on the DC radio unannounced, saying Linda Mitchell, who's daughter of Clarence Mitchell, old Clarence Mitchell, the Mitchell family of Maryland, Clarence Mitchell and all the rest of them. He says, I need to tell you something about it. You know, in 87, I tried to arrest Ricky Ross 6 times and couldn't get him arrested. And then every time when I tried to buy drugs from him, he was in Lincoln Heights, right outside of Cincinnati, the FBI would give me other assignments and give me on other cases that didn't mean anything. And then one day they had indictments announcing the Ricky Ross gang going to jail. Only problem was Ricky Ross wasn't in the indictments. Now, that's the type of shit should have been in the book. We shouldn't be having to flush that off your hind when you think we get ready to beat your butt. But strategy still works. We're still getting information. And this I thought was intriguing in LA when the story broke. They tried to bait people, certain people out into the story. Notice how they started the story. This is a story, conspiracy theories aside. Now, the story came out in August. The story really didn't get known in the public until the final call redid the story and put it out. That's when most black people, including myself, heard the story for the first time. And that was very valuable. That was good work. Because that really lifted it up to the level that made the congressman act on it, a half act on it. But notice how they start the story. They start off ridiculing Dick Gregory, Steve Coakley, and the Nation of Islam, and KJLH. That's trying to bait certain people out to respond. I waited 9 months before I said one thing on the CIA drug issue. because I knew the story smelled, and I felt I better wait to see how strong they fighting before I bring my strong on the street. This ain't but half of what we got, but we need to let them out there a little bit further, let the drama get a little bit deeper, and at the best, now interestingly enough, as far as we fought for economic sanctions against non-black businesses from November, December, and January, they said on July 4th, if the CIA ain't answered them, they're gonna have economic sanctions for Thanksgiving to Christmas. And I said, damn, where were they all them years? We've been on the ground trying to get that thing off, and they've been even putting letters in the paper condemning us for doing it. Now all of a sudden, in a fake war with the CIA, they're going to act like they're going to do that. Anyway, you can see that that is a part of the story that I want to share. And I guess mainly we will remember that the CIA, like the FBI and all the rest of them, are guardian animals. And I'll close with what William Bulward says about the CIA. And I know it's hard to read, but he gives a interesting break. He calls them the cryptocracy. And he gives a discussion of what they do. Excuse me, and how they do that. And I thought it was somewhat profound. And it's a description. You can just read that. Cryptocracy is a brotherhood reminiscent of an ancient secret societies with rites of initiation and indoctrination programs to develop in its loyal membership special understanding of its mysteries. It has secret codes and oaths of silence which reinforce the sense of elitism necessary for the maintenance of its strict loyalty, and it's automated, organized in the mode of a computer where all have access to general knowledge and most obvious aims and goals, but where the individual is isolated by tribal rituals and compartmentalization. It is a technocratic organization without ideology, loyalty only to an unspoken expedient and unidentified patriotism. Its members are anonymous, its funds are secret, its operational history is secret, even its goals are secret. It says, if the prospective agent cannot be recruited by an appeal to patriotism, he is bribed. If he cannot be bribed, he is white-mailed. If he refuses to be white-mailed, he is programmed. If all of these fail, he is killed. So now you can see why congressmen would get scared working against the CIA. So we would want to make sure that we kept up on them on that. John Sidney Pritchett III, Basil Patterson, Benjamin Barrington Parker, John Parker, Dr. Godfrey Moraine, Dr. Marcus Moore, Dr. Thomas Mentor, Dr. Donald Miller, James Robert Matisse, Charles Wayman Meredith, Cornelius McDonald, Eugene McCabe, William Lucas, the Honorable Richard Bryant Lowell III, George Lewis, Edward Lewis, Mr. Edward Joseph Levy, Mr. George Knox, Ulysses K., Attorney Lowell Douglas Johnston, Mr. Ye Vincent Johnson, Hobart Jarrett, John Jacob, Bernard Jackson, John Hutchison III, Edward Horn, Benjamin Hooks, Paul Haywood, Reverend D.S. Harrington, Attorney Conrad Harper, Dr. Bernard Harrelson, Dr. Bernard Harrelson, 22 Lawrence Lane, Lexington, Massachusetts, but I guess he's around here, works around here. Attorney Charles Jordan Hamilton Jr., of course, Black Power Charles Hamilton. And that's, of course, where we left off on the Bob Law show when the people called in and said he was in the Boule. He said, well, what does that mean? He said, well, how can you write about Black Power and be in the Boule? And Bob Law said to this day that one day he'll have a show on the Boule. And they told him get Coakley. Right, so we still waiting. We ain't forgotten. And lastly, Roberto Reed, James Rome. Oh, I wonder if he related to Sylvia Rome. Oh, shit, I never thought about that. James Rome. Oh, shit. Mr. Harvey Russell. Mr. Frank Savage, Dr. Louis Shelton, Dr. Donald Stewart, Mr. Edward Swan Jr., Dr. William Taylor, Mr. Robert Taylor, Frank Thompson, Dr. Robert C. Weaver, Dr. Aaron Otis Wells, Dr. Morgan Weston II, Dr. Frost Benny Wilkerson, Mr. Frederick Wilkerson Jr., the Honorable Milton Williams, Frederick Williams, Mr. E. Thomas Williams, and Mr. Thomas A. Woods. Of that, out of order, are the Zeta Boule. Of course, I'll be up here. I'm going to bring these lists up here next week with all these Boule people, the Long Island chapter, the Brooklyn chapter, and the New York chapter. We're going to put them all on paper and pass them out next week because July is bad news for the Boule month. I love you, African people. What are we gonna say? I'm gonna probably have to do it another time. Anyway, let me turn the...
Steve Coakley. Brother Steve Coakley. Let us just close one moment. Let us just close as a family. If everyone could just hold hands. Just one moment. Everyone just be still for one moment. Next week, Brother Del Jones will be here.
Mm-hmm.